Louise. What I'm here to tell you about is a little bit, just a very short history of what's gone on and to how we're here today with growers doing gluten-free oats. Back in the 90s, we thought that oats, the protein in oats called avenin, was toxic and caused the same reaction as the provolone proteins in the wheat, rye, and barley. But the Europeans started to do some more research and discovered it was not the protein that was causing the issue, it was the fact that these oats were very contaminated, because we know that oats are in rotation with gluten-containing crops, particularly barley and wheat. And so they found that if we could get an oat that had been grown on land and had been processed and got to the consumer that did not have any wheat, rye, or barley, that would be safe for consumers. So at the time, back in the early 2000s, we had Dr. Vern Burrows, and we call him Dr. O, and he was an oat scientist, and he said, you know, there's got to be a way that we can work with Health Canada and Agriculture Canada to get a pure oat to market so that people with celiac disease could have oats. So for my nutrition hat, oats is a wonderful nutritional grain because it's high in the beta-glucan, the soluble fiber, which controls blood sugars, cholesterol, and it also makes a very nice gluten-free product. As you tasted, for those of us on the bus today, we tasted those muffins. And so we were wondering, what could we do to get these to market? And there were many, many hurdles. The problem was Health Canada's regulation for gluten-free defined gluten as wheat, rye, barley, and oats. And we started on this process in 1996 to get the regulations changed so that we could get oats taken out of that list. And it took us till 2014 to finally get oats to be able to be labeled gluten-free. So things don't move fast in government. And so we're really thrilled that that could happen. And so we spoke, myself and Dr. Burrows spoke at the company name before Avena was Farm Pure Foods. And we came out and did a presentation on behalf of the Canadian Celiac Association to tell them about the research and the science that oats could be safe if they could come up with an agricultural solution to get oats to market that were not contaminated. If you have 2 to 3 barley kernels in a kilo of oats, what is that, about 20 to 25,000 depending on the size of the groats, that will trip it over 20 parts per million. And that is the regulatory threshold for the definition of gluten-free in Canada and the US and many countries around the world. So that means we have to do things agronomically to make sure that we don't have any wheat, rye, and barley in those crops. So it starts with pure seed and making sure your land, the crop rotation, clean land, your equipment, getting it to the mill, and then getting it milled and packaged to the consumer so that it is safe. And so I'm really thrilled to see Avena where we are today with all of the different people here that are some of the end users. Audrey and I and Melissa, that's what we're counting on, is that the food industry will provide safe gluten-free food that will not only be under 20 parts per million, but ideally as low as you can go. And the test kits that we have now will not detect under 3 parts per million. So you'll get a no detectable gluten on some of these tests, but because consumers always say, well, we want 0 parts per million. Well, we can't test to 0, but we can get down there pretty darn close. And just to tell you that if someone with celiac disease, it's an autoimmune disorder. And many of you have heard about lupus and multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes. Well, celiac is in that list of autoimmune diseases. And unfortunately, what happens is we've got the wrong computer chip in the brain. And what happens is when we see wheat, rye, or barley, our intestines go red alert, start fighting. This is an enemy. We got problems, Houston. And so you can get all kinds of symptoms from consuming gluten. So not just only gastrointestinal, which is lovely to talk about after dinner, but things like bloating, abdominal pain, gas, diarrhea, or constipation. And then you can also get anemia, can lead to osteoporosis, cancer of the gut, migraine headaches, neuropathy, reproductive issues. I mean, the list goes on because gluten attacks all the different organ systems of the body, and it just depends on the individual person how the symptoms manifest itself. And we know that the average length of time from someone when they get their symptoms till they finally get diagnosed, we did a study on almost 6,000 people in Canada, it was almost 12 years seeing multiple doctors and given wrong diagnoses like irritable bowel, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. So it's a serious autoimmune disorder. But the good news as a dietitian, I can say to people that you will feel so much better once we get gluten out of your diet. Now that sounds simple, just don't eat bread. Well, it's not that simple. It's not just avoiding baked products from wheat, rye, or barley, but those grains are used, and some of the components from those grains are used in all kinds of foods, sauces, salad dressings, soups, you name it, beer, it's everywhere. So it's a very, very difficult diet, and as a dietitian, I can tell you it's probably the most difficult diet to help someone adjust to their lifestyle. And especially if you travel, which I do, it's very difficult. You can't eat a lot of foods in airports and all kinds of places. So we're depending on manufacturers and our ingredient suppliers to get us safe, gluten-free ingredients and foods that are definitely well under the 20 part per million threshold.